Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of No Excuses on VTWProductions.com and YouTube.com with your hosts, Venurian.
And Volocel, and we're here to bring you the latest news and commentary on the video games industry for the week. And we have no Ari this time, because this time he's been dragged up Stone Mountain by his family with little to no planning. So, we didn't realize he wasn't going to be here, and he didn't realize he wasn't going to be here, but his family is very stern about family outing.
Yeah. So we'll see how many pieces he comes back in. There are some strange things that happen in on Stone Mountain, from my knowledge. So we shall see.
Yes.
Random D&D adventures notwithstanding.
First of all, if you would like to get involved with the show, you can do so by sending us email at noexcusesvtw@gmail.com. Or you can follow us on the Twitter at NoExcusesVTW, or you can join us in our Discord server, which you can most easily access by going to VTWProductions.com and clicking on the No Excuses logo on any of our recent show posts. That should take you directly to our Discord server, where you can post things in our various channels and chat with the other people there.
And the things in the stuff. Yes. Alright, so on the stream today I'm playing a little bit of Astroneer, which is a very strange little game about not dying on an alien planet, I guess. That's about it.
There seem to be a number of games where that appears to be the only real objective.
Yeah. So you get to... This one you play as possibly a fat little astronaut. You can play a skinny little astronaut if you really want to. And, yeah, the whole system is... expand your range so that way you don't end up losing your air tether and suffocate horribly.
I see.
And rinse and repeat.
I wonder if that's actually a thing, because it always seemed rather strange to me, like a trope that I have no idea if it's actually based in reality. The idea that you are tethered by an air hose to your spaceship or whatever, and nothing else. It crops up in stories all the time, particularly children's stories. But it's like, I wonder if it's actually based on anything.
You can do it with a reinforced hose, I suppose.
But why would you? Why would you not have some other form of tethering that did not, put your air supply at risk?
Yeah. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, does it?
After all, you don't have very much control over your movement in zero gravity at all.
No. Oh no, everything's turned green. Because apparently a dust storm on an alien planet is a thing that immediately happens. Alright, so anyway, my week this week. I didn't have one, really.
Yeah, I've been saying that a lot lately.
Yeah. I'm still working the 6.5-ish days.
You keep telling me that, it's not going to be like that anymore. We found somebody.
Yeah, then we lost her. Then we found her again, and now we've lost her permanently. So yeah, that's not happening. So yeah, good times. I don't want to adult anymore.
No, it very seldom seems to be worth it.
No. So what did I actually play and watch and things this week? This week, no anime. There is no good anime in the new series. At all.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that. I haven't been able to bring myself to watch any of them. Like, I might tonight start to poke at some, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's very, very hard to get motivated to do so. It's just so underwhelming.
Yeah.
There are lots of things I could do with that time. Rewatch old series, watch backlog, play games from game backlog, play games I'm currently working on. Like, rather than, dredge my way through the really poor offerings which seem to be making up most of this season.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe things will change. But most things that are on offer this time, either they don't interest me, either they really don't interest me, or they look absolutely dreadful. So...
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'll just take a season off apart from one or two shows or something.
Yeah, it sounds...
really...
Yeah. It sounds like, time allowing anyway, it's a good time to catch up on the backlog.
Yeah, but even the backlog, I find it hard to get motivated to watch, because most of the backlog is stuff that it wasn't important enough to me to watch it when it was airing. So
Yeah.
it does not really stand very high on the priority chain.
No, it really doesn't. As far as games, poked away at Destiny 2 a bit more. Honestly, it is really hard to stay enthused about that game. It's not bad that in the way that it's fun to play or it's fun to mock, because it is a competent game. It's just not a very interesting one.
Yeah, it's just totally bland is all.
Yes.
But I pretty much hit the wall with it last week, just after the show. Like, I had hit level 20 or whatever, and I'd stopped getting levels, and they wanted me to give them more money if I wanted my level to keep going up. And the story is not compelling in the slightest. I'm barely able to perceive its existence, let alone to regard whether or not it's compelling.
No.
But,
Ari did apparently cough up for it. And he said some very, very, very strange things about the plot. But I think we should have to wait to see what he says about that.
I'm not impressed, I have to say. It's just like there are things about the game that are impressive, but the game itself is not.
Yeah, we've been saying this on
good points, and it doesn't even have bad points really. Like, other than the fact the story is completely balls.
That's the thing. I'd rather the game was awful, because we could at least get some good mileage out of it being awful, but it's not.
Well, the thing is, it's like it's perfectly balanced in a certain way, in the way that, like, nobody ever wants to take the all-rounder in their party because they're not good for anything. like a lot of the games that I like a lot, that like might be in my top 10 or whatever, have something that they are absolutely dreadful at. And yet they're still some of my favorite games. Why? Because they genuinely excel at something that I love. And there's just nothing excellent here. In exchange for not being bad at anything, they are far from good at anything. Like, it's just not worth it. It's not worth it. There's nothing to grab you, nothing to inspire you. Like, if you were planning on spending money on it and going the distance with it and spending a lot of time with it, I could be convinced to do so also. But then you're back in that old mindset of looking for multiplayer to save a bad game.
Yeah.
And honestly, it really can in a lot of cases, but you also still have to regard, well, is there multiplayer for some other game that we could be playing instead that we would enjoy more?
Exactly.
Character or whatever. Like, I can't actually think of a good reason to play Destiny over Borderlands 2.
No, I can't. Borderlands 2 at least has charm.
It doesn't seem to be one. No. And there's a lot of content in Borderlands 2 that I never did, because Borderlands 2 for me, because I'm so bad at FPSs generally, Borderlands 2's lifespan was directly related to people who would play it with me. That is to say, people who would carry me because I can't at the side of a barn. But yeah, so there's a lot of content in that I never did, and it's like that to go back and do like the Tiny Tina DLC or whatever it was, rather than playing Destiny. Like, there's not even a competition to be had. Like, which of these is more interesting, playing Destiny or starting that old Borderlands 2 DLC? Like, there's not even a discussion.
Yeah.
Come on.
I mean, one's grey paste and the other one is an adorable sociopath. Take your pick.
Yeah, and that's really the case of Destiny in a nutshell. Like, it doesn't even have enough unique elements of it to justify it. It's like that. Even the class system is basically a worse version of Borderlands 1.
Yeah.
Like, I think it both benefits and suffers for not having very strong class identities, because you don't end up with the situation in Borderlands where your tech tree will tend to ground you out into using particular weapons, and then if you end up in a famine for good weapons of that type, you end up in difficulties. But on the other hand, like, you just end up only ever using the weapon that has the biggest number attached to it, and that's the only thing you care about.
Yeah. Yeah, no, thank you. That's just boring. I think the only real reason is there's people out there who have, let's just say, strong disagreement with the leadership over at 2K Games for reasonably, for usually extremely valid reason. But
Yeah, there are.
yeah,
I mean, when I think of Borderlands 2 as the most well-rounded, well-realized version of that idea they were going for there. It's I think that's the one that you end up. That's the one that I end up putting in my default slot for comparison with Destiny 2. And the fact that a game that much older than Destiny 2 could just be that much flat out better,
yeah,
at face value, it really needles me when I'm trying to play Destiny 2. That, like, well, there are things I like about this game, and there are things, like, in terms of like organic multiplayer content that can occur, although there's not very much synergy between various characters. It's still it doesn't justify it next to the fact that the game is just great pace.
Yeah. So yeah, that's probably honestly the last mileage I'm going to get out of Destiny 2. I might pick it up and just poke at it if I've got nothing better to do, but there's better games I could be playing, honestly.
Yeah, I think that's the case. Like, if I had, a huge wealth of free time for some reason, like I could convince myself to play it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh well, I mean, I've got a day to burn, rather than my actual reality, which is once in a while I have an hour to burn. If I had a day to burn, then it might be, oh well, I'll sit in here for a while and while away my time. But I don't have that sort of. That's not something I can do anymore. It's not practical.
No, because we've got to adult. I don't want to adult. Make it stab.
Even aside from that, though, it would be. I would probably just take up a more orthodox MMO if I was just trying to burn time like that.
Yeah, you could sink more time into Final Fantasy 14.
Yeah, and I would rather do that because I've got a personal attachment to that setting, those characters, to that world.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have that with Destiny because it has the most generic sci-fi setting imaginable.
And a plot that's never really explained. At all.
And there's a part of me that really wants to like it because you can just sort of log in and tool around and shoot some things,
and
that works. But the low cap of progression accomplished by that is not really what I'm looking for in that capacity. Like, I have a real weakness for accumulation. Like, I want something to accumulate over time, and I feel like there's nothing meaningfully accumulating in that game. Like, you hit the level cap, as I did, in a quite shallow sort of way because I didn't have the expansions, and then I wasn't really accumulating anything anymore. Like, sure, I can just keep filling the EXP bar, and it seems like you get an engram when you do that.
Mm-hmm. Loot box.
But that just contains random crap.
Yep.
Oftentimes, random crap you can't use.
Yep.
Because it's garbage, or you hate it, or something. But yeah, I don't know. It's just it doesn't have that accumulation that I want. So it doesn't fulfill the MMO. It doesn't scratch the MMO itch for me. It doesn't scratch the FPS adventure itch for me. It doesn't scratch the sci-fi itch for me. What itch does it scratch?
Mm.
It doesn't. It doesn't have a niche because it tries to be all things to all men.
Yeah, I suppose it could be worse. From all reports out of the Anthem Alpha, it's like Destiny 2 but worse.
I'm not really surprised by that.
Yeah.
Like, it's just Anthem looks like a disaster waiting to happen, I have to say.
It really does. It's sad. I don't like watching game companies and new IPs fail because they're bad.
The thing is with Anthem is it doesn't feel to me like they put any effort in.
Yeah.
It like this world that they've created appears to have almost no substance.
It's generic as they come.
Like, from what they've shown, there's nothing there. It's just this is one unit world. Like, you could substitute the Destiny setting, or you could substitute the Monster Hunter setting, or you could substitute the what is that thing? The Warframe setting, or whatever. Like, you could jam any one of those sorts of things in there, because all they're showing is environment.
Yep.
And like it all, there's like one hub city, which is just like this. That's the same way that Destiny operates, isn't it?
Yep.
More or less.
Yeah.
And, like, how does this even work? This doesn't make sense. Like, why do you think that you're going to be able to make inroads into the market by doing the exact same thing as everybody else? Surely, by now, we've danced this dance enough times to learn the lesson.
You'd think, but no. So anyway, that's that. What else did I actually do this week? Went back and just on a random whim turned on the TV, and of all things to be on the TV at the time, BattleBots was on. Which, for those who've never seen it before, is I'm not going to call it a game show. It's a tournament where engineers build combat fighting robots and then smash them into each other. And whoever's robot is in the most pieces at the end wins.
Right, wait, really? Is that how it works?
More or less. Yeah, whoever wins the end, whoever wins. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's where what's his name? Grant Imahara from Mythbusters got his start.
Right.
And Adam Savage is actually one of the judges for this season. So yeah, it's
I don't know who that is.
One of the main Mythbusters.
I never followed Mythbusters.
Yeah.
So.
He just keeps popping up and doing all this nerdy stuff. So yeah, he's kind of filling that niche. So yeah, there's not a whole lot really to say about it other than it's just a lot of fun watching robots demolish each other.
Well, yes, that seems like what it's for.
Yes. Like, you don't need to be an engineer or a science nerd or anything like that to enjoy it. It's just, it's robots smashing each other to tiny little bits. Go watch it. It's fun. It's great. And, yeah, the teams and particularly the announcer. The announcer, I swear I've seen him in something before, but he's your stereotypical pre-wrestling match announcer. Complete with the dad jokes. Dad jokes and terrible puns.
Wasn't there someone who tried to really formalize that as a sport at one point?
Yeah, I think it's been tried a couple of times.
I guess when your entire shtick is to creatively subvert the rules using your design, it's sort of very hard to build a consistent league.
Yeah, like there's people out there, there's robots in their design who kind of take the rules at their word and just kind of bend them around a bit.
Yes, I remember watching some of these old competitions when I was like much younger, and I'm pretty sure that it ended up on what was it like? Every year it would end up being like they would add the Yu-Gi-Oh ban list.
Yeah, so like things you can't do.
Yeah, they would have to ban thing after thing after thing after thing because the competitors were more creative, obviously, than the rule setting people.
Mm-hmm.
And so you ended up with a situation where, oh, well, the person that managed to break the rules in the most egregious way, the rules that didn't exist yet, in the most egregious way, would be the one that won. So, like, by the time they'd run through the cycle a few times, the rules list was so spectacularly long that it was basically there was very little room for creativity, and you converge very rapidly on the same design over and over again, which was just a steel wedge.
Yeah, and
because that was the only thing that would work reliably without contravening some unwritten rule.
Well, even so, you could over-design everything to the nines, but if you get enough force behind a steel wedge and just ram it underneath a robot, provided they haven't accounted for an anti-flip system, that will win you the game 9 times out of 10.
Yeah,
or at least it used to.
Yeah, that was what I saw. And the fact is that things rapidly got very uninteresting to watch. in those leagues because the design was so convergent.
Yeah.
Because there were too many things that could go wrong anytime you complicated the design.
Mm-hmm. So
and because one of the things that you ended up having to do, of course, in order to maintain a lose condition, is that there were extremely harsh limits on what you could do for anti-flip.
Yep.
Because you need to still be able to be flipped.
Yep.
Because you can't lose otherwise. So you can't. I remember that there was there was one time where a match just went on forever because somebody had designed a robot that had no bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no way to stop it.
No.
Because it didn't have a way of being turned over and rendered immobile. And in the end, the only thing that could beat it was a wedge that just happened to be steep enough that it could jam it up against a wall and pin it.
Yep. They've accounted at least for that now. Everything. Yeah, there are time limits now.
But what I'm trying to get at here is that it sounds like it would be really cool to have a formal robot fighting league, but in this particular situation, the efficient design is so brutally convergent that there seems to be very little room to work.
Yeah, that's not to say anything of technology outpacing the rules as well.
Yeah, I remember that it's just year 2 already had a ban list. Nothing liquid, nothing incendiary, nothing this, no that, no that, no that, no that.
Yeah.
There were so many things you couldn't do because it would be catastrophic if you did them.
Yeah, BattleBots at least allows incendiaries, which means you see people in the new tournaments coming out and they'll have their robot and it'll be backed up by a drone with a flamethrower on it, which 9 times out of 10 does absolutely nothing and will just crash into the wall because the person piloting isn't very good at that sort of thing.
Well, let's assume that it would be that they are good at it. Let's assume that they're perfect at it. All that does is introduce a design constraint must not be flammable.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem. Is that what you end up doing is just your opponents are just creating design constraints. They're not competitors. So which is why, when you envisage these types of things in sci-fi rather than in practice,
yeah,
it's much more interesting because everybody in those situations is operating on the same chassis. So what you have instead is Formula One, in a sense. But except you can use different weaponry, I guess. But you need to have that level playing field. All of the things that seem really cool and creative about it don't actually work.
Yeah,
because if you don't have a level playing field, everybody will just converge on the same strategy. Because you can't adventurously branch out into other things.
Yeah, you see people come in and they've got some really cool ideas. Like one guy came out and he had a robot which has tracks as a base but a humanoid top, which he controlled using gyros on his arms. So he got not exactly one-to-one motion, but pretty good all things considered. But he went against a robot which was just, designed to punch holes in things. So really cool new design, but now it's confetti.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're seeing a bit more variance because people tend to account for the just the random wedge attack. But yeah. There are designs.
I think it's very hard to put an end to the wedge. That's the thing.
It's because it's like the perfect machine. You cannot possibly make it any simpler.
The simplest device in the world is the lever.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's a lever.
Yeah.
It's a class 1 lever, and that's all it is, and that's all it needs to be.
Yep.
And this is the problem. This is the reason that we don't have Gundam fighting competitions. Because people are too good.
Because everything will end up with just wedges. That's what it'll come down to, is that someone will just come out with a wedge or an equivalent. Yeah, I don't think they allow tasers anymore either.
Yeah, that's usually banned before the league opens.
Yeah,
which uses electricity because it's just going to blow out all of the circuitry. The first person to get touched.
Yep, one good hit with that and it's dead.
And then all that ends up doing is introducing a design constraint. Oh, well, your outer surfaces of your chassis can't conduct electricity.
You've got to insulate your chassis, yeah.
Yeah, that's the problem. Either they make it a rule or it becomes a design constraint.
Yeah.
And then that rule is therefore, a proxy design constraint. And it's sad. Like, I want to have Gundam fighting competitions. I think that would be cool. But you need to have everybody in a Gundam first.
Yep. And not a glorified cheese.
Yeah. Because that's really what most of them look like, a wedge of cheese.
Yeah. The new one, at least this time around, seems to be a rotating drum with a notch on it. Put enough speed and torque behind that. It's basically that. It's a large round drum with an extra piece, a tooth, I guess, stuck onto it somewhere. But you get that rotating with enough speed and enough torque, and it will just completely launch whatever touches it. If it doesn't shred it outright.
It's efficient, but it's not cool.
It's very cool when you see a robot going flying 10 feet into the air.
I don't think it is that cool, because I think that the ones that do creative things are more interesting than the ones that just are a method of applying the most raw force in one direction.
Oh yeah, that'll always be the case. It's just a shame that
those robots are boring, but they're efficient. They do the job that they're supposed to. Mm-hmm. It's not even slightly cool. Nah. That's my problem. But yeah. I almost respect more the people that enter things that they know will lose but will look cool doing it.
Yeah. Although there's
there's almost always a guy that figures out how to put a massive circular saw on the end of an arm and attack things with it. And that robot always loses, but it always deserves to win because it's cooler.
Yeah. I've got a lot of respect for a robot called Megatento. Like, it's a giant red plastic ladybug with a saw or a barrel drum underneath it. Almost never wins. Like, it's got a cool concept where it drops the plastic shell over top of the opponent and traps them and then takes them apart with its weapon. So even though that's happening, the judges really can't see what's happening. But it never wins because it's large, but it's extremely lightweight. Yeah. And the weapon just doesn't really get into position, even when the outer shell's been shredded off. And so yeah, this thing consistently loses, but it's such a cool idea. I just love watching it.
Yeah, so you would need to design a very rigorous set of rules which place people on the same playing field. Mm-hmm. Like, you would have to, like, the best way that you could make it work would actually be, you are supplied with a fixed amount of materials from which you can build things and so on, and that fixed pool of materials is curated such that you can't do any of the most common bullshit. But like, because what always ends up happening when you've got freedom is that the amount of raw horsepower you can pack into that little shell is always going to be worth the most, because it'll allow you to either make your thing heavier or make your thing more powerful, faster.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the only two things that really, when those are the two power constraints, that requires that's what results in the simplest machine possible mentality, because you don't need to do anything clever if you've got more power than everybody else.
Yep.
That seems to be the way it is. Like, if everybody had, this is the maximum amount of joules of torque you're allowed to propel yourself with in general, then people would need to have creative ways of applying that rather than just simply upping the power again and again and again and again. Because that's where you get that drum problem, right? That drum problem doesn't work if, like, you're limited on your torque to the point where you can't insta-jib someone with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if that's your only toy, and it's not enough to completely take out your opposition in one go, then it's useless.
Yeah.
And you'd be much better off, distributing the power you're allowed across servos to actually do something manipulative.
Mm-hmm. Although, actually, that is a funny story. There was Torque. There's one robot, at least in this season, that showed up, and The team played it up to the nines. They had the coloured contact lenses. They brought the robot out in a coffin, the whole bit. The fight started, and something went wrong. This robot just tore itself apart with its own torque. The other robot didn't even need to touch it.
I've seen that happen to a few robots as well, that they fail right out the gate.
Yep.
And that's because nerds always tinker right up to the last minute.
Yeah. Yes, they do.
And usually the last test will be heavily abbreviated. Or oftentimes what's happening is that they don't have the right distribution of different types of engineers, and so they have got somebody who's good at like mechatronics engineering, and they got good at somebody who's good at dynamics calculations, but they don't bring anybody who knows statics onto the team.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing can withstand the internal strain once it's been applied for a certain amount of time. So all the training runs are fine, but the structure is so fatigued by the end of the training that it can't stand up to the actual match.
Yeah, like it'll work on the bench, but as soon as they start moving, something moves, and everything goes to hell. So yeah, anyway, all of that aside, I still enjoy watching it. It is still good fun, especially when people get creative.
I just wish that there were Gundams.
I would actually watch Gundams all day.
Like if there was actually like giant humanoid robot fighting league, it would be the most popular thing on television. Period. End.
Damn right it would. Can we just make that a thing, please? We just need the technology.
Well, people are trying. It's just that the materials aren't up to snuff. Like the current generation of materials of like super composites and nanotubes and stuff like that, like they are not cheap and large scale enough to use. So we're using old stuff like metal, and that's just not good enough, to be honest.
Yeah.
To sustain things on that size. It's the same problem that you see with lots of things. Like you don't scale things indefinitely. It's like how, like biologically speaking, for instance, the Honey I Shrunk the Kids story doesn't work because as soon as you shrunk that small, you would instantly snap freeze.
Yes.
Like you would die because you can't generate enough heat to keep yourself alive. You die of hypothermia instantly. So, like, there's lots of things that don't scale, and one of the things that doesn't scale is sheer size. You can't increase the size of a robot. It's one of the plot points in Full Metal Panic, actually, that the only reason that the arm slave behemoth works is because the Lambda driver allows it to break physics. So if the Lambda driver overheats, it just collapses under its own weight because you simply can't scale up a robot to be that large.
I read a superhero story like that actually fairly recently where they had a giant robot, and the thing is it had a device in it which allowed it to negate gravity. As soon as that thing broke, the whole thing just collapsed under its own power, under its own weight.
So you need, in order to actually have the Gundam Fighting League, material science needs to advance to the point where materials are simultaneously strong and light enough to allow high-speed movement without, having to spend all of your time working on, structural integrity of metals and trying to keep it simultaneously heavy and light, which doesn't really work. So,
yeah, physics will get you every time.
Yeah, it's annoying like that.
Stupid physics. Can't stop getting in the way of us having giant robots.
Yeah, how dare you get in the way of our giant robot fighting league?
Alright. So I guess that's about it for my week, is just random nonsense about robots. And
yeah, I'm trying to pad content here.
I know. It's going to be a very light week and probably a very short week. Oh no, I've just ruined it. Well, so much for that.
Well, Ari might show up at some point.
Yeah, maybe.
Mind you, I don't think he's done much either. I wanted him to explain why when I got up this morning. Aside from the usual political crowing, my Twitter feed was full of memes about cowboy hat Dante. So I guess that he can have a cowboy hat or something.
I guess.
And Ari is sort of like my go-to explainer for Devil May Cry stuff.
Yeah.
He didn't. He's been up on Stone Mountain all day, so didn't have anything to contribute.
That seems to be pretty much the running theme for a lot of stuff that I've seen about DMC5 lately, is just why? What is this? Why is this a thing? What are you doing? Make it stop, please.
I'm furious.
Uh, it's not. It's just nuts. Yeah. So anyway, your week. Anything worth noting?
Not really. I didn't do a huge amount this week. Like I started, I had thought that this week I'll be spending my free time poking away at Destiny 2. But when I hit that wall on last Sunday, I basically was like, you know what? I ain't gonna stuff anymore. And I haven't started the game up since.
'Tis a brutal wall, that one.
Yeah, and it's really rough. I have a lot of things to play, and that one just doesn't rank. So let's see. I played a bunch of FGO, as I always do, because it's the easiest thing to play when you're moving about and have no time. So I continued. I did a little bit of the Camelot chapter. Didn't make as much progress as I'd like because I kept having events crash down on me. But I wish Camelot was a sillier place. I really do, because that chapter is dark.
It is not even remotely silly.
It is getting darker. Oh no, it is silly. That's the thing. It's just that it's very dark humor. Very, very dark. Like occasionally, like, cause the thing is that the knights are all goofballs. Like the court of King Arthur is a complete cluster F as far as stable human beings goes.
Yeah,
like they are all such eccentrics. Yeah, they're all dorky in different ways, really. The only one who is not really is Agravain, and he's trying to be the straight man for the entire round table.
Oh, good luck with that.
And it is clearly wearing on his patience. But yeah, they're a bunch of spastics, but they're all completely sociopathic.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
In this, despite the fact that they're all goofballs and they do goofball things, and you've got this sort of humorous thing of Arthur deciding to punish Gawain by firing him through a wall using her noble phantasm,
as you do.
Like that's a comic scene, right? You would expect, but the reason why she's doing it is that Gawain didn't massacre all the innocents efficiently enough.
Yeah, that sounds about right too.
Like the whole thing is just as the humor is framed in such a dark way that once you feel amused, you start to feel a little bit sick because it's not normal. The game has been so lighthearted up till this point, but it's just taken a nosedive into cynical territory here.
Yes, it's one of the things that tends to get lost in a lot of the histories. King Arthur was a right bastard. Yeah,
well, this King Arthur is a bigger bastard than normal because this King Arthur has left humanity long behind.
Oh dear.
This isn't standard Artoria who's all torn up inside about the well-being of her people. This is like totally gone off the. So this is like King Arthur. What is it? The Injustice Superman.
Oh, okay. Completely lost the plot.
Yeah, like the only thing that matters now is building my perfect utopia because humanity can't be trusted to deal with itself. Like this is this version of King Arthur. This is the result of her. This is the incarnation of Fatestone Knight Arthur, which did not make Excalibur her main weapon, but made Rhongomyniad her main weapon. The thing about Rhongomyniad in the Fate setting is that, well, the Fate setting, one of the lesser known complications of the Fate setting is that it's sort of hard to describe because there are lots of parallel worlds in Fate, but each parallel world has a parallel world as well. Just in that there are, simplifying out, leaving aside all of the reality marbles, because all the reality marbles are also parallel worlds.
Yep.
Anchored to a main one. There is a pair of worlds associated with, say, Earth, and this is probably true for all the other planets as well, but the setting doesn't cover most of what might be living on the other planets. Usually because the things living on the other planets are so far from human rationality that there's no point in trying. Like pretty much all of them Eldritch Abomination. But basically, the world has two sides, an upside and a downside. We'll say. The world we live in is one of them, and then there's another world, which is where all of the stuff that disappeared during the Age of Gods has gone. And it's where Sieg carts the Grail off to in Apocrypha at the end of the series, so that it can't be gotten to by any people. Is the other side of the world. The world is these two sort of places that they're both sort of, they're physically parallel to each other as well as metaphysically parallel to each other. Like it's a place that is there, but you can't reach it and you can't see it. It's just sort of like if you invert this world, you get the other world sort of thing. And that's where all the phantasmal beasts and that go. All the stuff that is too powerful for the rationality of the real world, as it has been established by the explosion of humanity's dominance. Aside from all the supernatural stuff, like all the supernatural stuff decided to basically shift to a world where they were more compatible, sort of thing. So that's the other one. Now the thing with Rhongomyniad is that the other world and our world have to be kept apart, but they also have to be kept together because they can't exist without each other, but they can't overlap.
Right.
So there are various things that anchor that in place. Rhongomyniad is one of like the things that nails the two worlds together. So basically, this version of King Arthur has taken out one of the nails that holds the world together and is using it as a weapon.
That seems really inadvisable.
It's something so fundamentally far removed from the normal common sense of humanity that it basically turns you into something else. I don't know if that's the main reason for why this version of Artoria is so far off the deep end, but it's probably not helping. No, I haven't made it far enough into the story to understand sort of the deeper motivations behind what has happened. But insofar as Artoria keeps choosing weapons, like Excalibur was safer, and Excalibur was made by Fae.
Yes.
So
I'm assuming I'm assuming the Fae in the Fate universe are just about as stable as the ones in ours.
They are safer in the sense that they are mostly totally uninterested in humanity now. Okay. Because they live on the other side. Like they don't have much dealings with the mortal world anymore. Like they basically got bored of it.
Yeah,
all the interesting stuff left, and humans are just basically meatbags now.
Yeah.
All of the power is gone, so nothing really cool happens. There are no heroes to tempt and manipulate anymore. Everybody's a normie. So the Fae just don't really care anymore. There are a few sort of like relatively kindly Fae who recognize that humanity needs to stay intact in order for everything else to stay intact. So they do help out humans once in a while, but sort of like one of the last interactions they ever had was to give Avalon and Excalibur to Arthur.
Right.
And that was basically because there needed to be something existing on the planet that could stop some of the wilder crap from causing the Earth to get obliterated. It's commented on in Extella that whatever Excalibur was before it became Excalibur, the same sword, but it hadn't been Excalibur yet, was what stopped Sepha the first time from turning the planet Earth into an empty waste.
No joy.
Like that was the only weapon available that could stop it. And this is Sepha killed Mars himself.
As in Roman god Mars?
Yeah, as in the god of war.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah.
Yeah. Do not mess with that guy.
That weapon remaining in the hands of humanity was sort of the Fae did that because they didn't want their world to get blown up either. So but Rhongomyniad is sort of worse because it's a fundamental part of the world itself. It's not just this is the sword Excalibur is the crystallization of humanity's wish not to get obliterated. Basically, there's more poetic ways that it's put throughout the franchise, but that's basically what it is.
Sounds about right.
This is the last hope of humanity. Rongaminiad is a fundamental aspect of the metaphysical nature of the world, and you shouldn't pull it out and use it as a weapon, in my opinion. It's not safe.
Nope, no, it is not.
I don't know who's responsible for putting it there in the first place, whether it's a natural part or whether it's something that was designed and created by Merlin to stick there in order to prevent things from going haywire, because Merlin's sort of not very natural anymore. Like he was never human, but he's even further removed from humanity in Fate Stay Night by the time a lot of the story takes place. And he's also the Dick Wizard.
He's also the Dick Wizard.
Yeah, he's the Dick Wizard.
And
because he is a wizard, and because he is a dick, and because he gives people dicks who don't otherwise have them.
Yeah. I just don't think about that too hard.
It's probably not worth thinking about. It's only going to cause you damage. But yeah, so that story is way, way darker. The writing is way better, but the story is way darker. And I would like to make progress in it, but I was interrupted. And I was interrupted by the rerun of Halloween 2017.
Yes, which is incredibly silly.
It is a very, 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 very silly place. Despite the fact that Elizabeth Bathory's castle is probably not a very silly place IRL.
No.
But yeah, so that rerun, you can really tell that it was done at a much earlier stage of the game's life. Number one, because the quests are a lot easier, and number two, because the overall structure of the event is simpler and easier. And I can see how the idea that you should be clearing an event shop got established, because while I haven't gotten anywhere near clearing the event shop, it looks like something that is much, much more doable in this event than it has been in recent ones, where it was nearly impossible, like without being super organized, spending all your free time playing FGO and burning a gajillion golden apple.
Well,
so in this case, they are much freer with their golden apples given as rewards, probably because people's AP pools weren't as big back then. And they you don't need as much currency in order to get through things, and the currency into conversion is much more efficient as well. So yeah, but the core story is very short and very silly, but it's expectedly silly. There's a lot of Kiyohime in it, which pleases me, except that you've always got to be mean to her. And it's really a poor lookout for the world when Kiyohime is playing the straight man.
Yeah.
There's something fundamentally wrong about that.
Everyone's favourite little murder snack, and she's the one talking sense. The world is broken.
Very much so.
Although then Tamamo Cat happens, and nonsense. Nonsense is basically Tamamo Cat.
Yeah, well, Tamamo Cat is a berserker. She doesn't have much of a rationality.
No.
Like, just because words are coming out of her mouth doesn't mean they make sense, much like Spartacus.
Yeah. I was going to say that at least she's not quite so loud, but no, that's not true.
No, Tamamo Cat is a beast.
Yes.
But, yeah, so it's a fun little event. Hopefully it won't take me very much time to get through it, because if it's anything like it was in Japan, the next Halloween event will overlap with it.
Yes.
So I'm trying to get all the most important stuff out of the way, and I just managed to do that before the show. So I've gotten all the copies of Caster Liz, and I've gotten all of the Ascension materials for Liz.
You notice that they're actually calling this Halloween 2017 Light.
Yeah, well, they've adjusted some of the stuff. I'm not quite sure what the particular adjustments were, but the costs of some materials were changed. The particular number and frequency of special event battles that occur during the event has changed. That sort of thing.
So it's not quite as much of a slog.
Yeah, I don't know if they've made it easier or harder. Probably they've made it easier, although I wouldn't have surprised me if they made it harder, because people are better equipped at the time. But yeah, it's primarily for the purpose of letting people who weren't there the first time, like me, see and participate in the event.
Yeah.
And that's appreciated. But yeah, I've got to clear the materials still, but I don't know how much effort I'll put in. I'll probably just keep clearing them until such time as it's like, oh well, the new one's out. I'll move to focusing on that now.
Yeah.
Because the next one is contemporary with other events, so it's much more complicated and much more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know much about the particulars of how it's structured though, so I'll just have to wait and see.
All we know is it's also going to be silly.
It seems to be that basically Liz is playing a video game, except, IRL in context.
Oh dear.
I'm not really sure what the story is. It looks very, very strange and very silly, as always.
Yep.
But it seems like the map for it is very strange.
I haven't even looked at that yet.
It's not like the normal maps are just like, oh well, there's a picture of the area and there's various missions scattered around on it, right? So let's see if I can get one and drop it in the whatchamacallit chat channel. Here we go. Live show chat. Here we go. That's what the map looks like for the next event.
Oh dear. That's a bit more complicated than usual.
It's very strange looking. I'm not really sure how it works out, but you can sort of get an idea of the feel of what's going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure why it looks like Yu-Gi-Oh, but
yeah, now that you mention it.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I always enjoy the events. Mainly, I enjoy the story. The events are usually brutal and they make me cry because they're so hard, because I'm so bad. I have the tactical sense of a lemming. But yeah. Have I done anything else this week? I played a bunch of Shining Resonance, which has been one of my slowest progresses through an RPG ever, simply due to the lack of time. And also it not being that great, it makes it sort of hard to motivate myself to play it with the sort of intensity I might otherwise. But it's toddling along and following pretty much expected story beats for a story of its type. It does have its own little successes, and I've got my own little problems with it. One of the things that sort of disturbed me the most is, like, it's got the church in it, which is evil because
the church.
It's because it's a video game from Japan, so of course the church is evil.
Of course.
But what sort of disconcerts me about it is how sort of like closely they are parodying the actual Catholic Church. Like they are pulling in an awful lot of sort of like traditional terminology and stuff and then putting a really blasphemous spin on it. Like I don't know if it was like that in the original Japanese or whether there's somebody who was working on it who has a real axe to grind against the Catholic Church or what.
It could go either way.
Normally it's enough for these people because they are moderns, so obviously they hate the church and they hate the Catholic Church twice as much. Normally it's enough for moderns to just say, oh, well, this is the church and they're evil, and then just make them a fantasy organization. But no, they are rapidly shaping up to be the big bad here, and they have basically, they take the sacraments and they directly create a blasphemous parallel to them and that sort of thing. They bring in all the terminology. All of it is designed to a little bit disturbingly closely echo what is real life. So that bothers me a little bit. Like they put in a little bit too much work, a little bit too much enthusiasm for that, considering how loosey-goosey the game is with every other aspect of its setting. It's just like, oh, well, it's a fantasy world, you can fill in the gaps. But the church is exquisitely detailed for whatever reason.
I don't know what to say on that.
But yeah, it's a minor foible because I'm used to every JRPG treating God as evil and the church as evil. Like, I'm not really sure why that's the trope, but it's the trope. So I'm accustomed to it. I'm just not accustomed to seeing it in high resolution.
Mm.
But yeah, the game in general is pretty much just following story beats, but it's got a few things that it's been quite successful at, like making the villain apparent, not basically not a villain. Like she's just it's as the story moves along, it becomes clear that she's very used to being a cold Iron Lady, but is not villainous in the conventional sense. She's just sort of a little bit of an extremist.
Okay.
A lot of an extremist.
That's
basically,
better.
she's just worried about her dad, basically. And the only way forward that she can see is to start a war.
Right.
And if she doesn't, then her dad will die and her nation will collapse into civil war chaos. And the only thing that's holding it together, that has a chance of holding it together, is a war where thousands will die anyway. But so they managed to bring a bit of sympathy to her. Because the story is not very, unlike a lot of JRPG, the story is not really that heavily tethered to the party's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you as the player know way more about the story than the people that you're actually playing with, than the party that you're steering around the map.
Mm-hmm.
Like you get sort of like cutaway scenes where you get to see all the conversational scenes that are happening on the other side of the war as well as on your side, but none of your dudes do.
Right.
So you've got perspective that they don't. So they still react with utmost hostility at times, where you know that they actually have more sympathetic methods, they have more sympathetic reasons, and they act with sort of like blasé hostility to people who are actually much more dangerous than they appear. So it's sort of a weird that you've been given sort of a weird God's eye view of the whole situation that you don't normally get.
Yeah,
which is, it's got its pluses and its minuses. And most of the time, it just simply frustrates me because, like, please just. I know what's going on. Just listen to me, but I'm not in there, so I can't tell them that. It's
you exist outside that universe. You don't get a say in this.
I don't get a say at all. And the game also repeatedly commits what I feel is the crime of the game outcome of a fight has nothing to do with the in-game way the fight went.
Oh, that's annoying.
I know that that's a normal thing that happens, particularly in RPGs, particularly in JRPGs, but I feel like it just happens too damn often in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a fight, I have fought Zest like twice or whatever.
Zest.
And the first time I wrecked him, absolutely wrecked him, and he wasn't trying and he destroyed me instantly afterwards.
Yeah, that is really annoying.
The second time, I didn't quite wreck him, but I mostly wrecked him. Like, he didn't really have a fighting chance. I walked all over him. And he was apparently, utterly humiliated and couldn't understand how we'd gotten so strong.
What?
Like, to me, those two fights were almost the same. They almost went the same way. But from his point of view, based on what he says after the battle, like, they were the opposite type of fight. But to me, it looks the same. And I just wish that retroactive fight interpretation stuff could be done a bit more elegantly, please. Come on.
Yeah.
But it happens all the time. And like, I never know, like, I'll kill a dragon, let's say. Like, one of the Draco Machina that the Empire uses to basically spearhead combat. And I'll bring one down, and I never know if it's just going to get up again and laugh it off, or whether I've actually put it down for realsies, because the story has faked me out on it too many times.
A lot of games, well, JRPGs, I think it's almost compulsory that they do one of those those fixed outcomes. I don't know, it just seems to be a tradition at this point. But, yeah, when they do it over and over and over, it just sounds annoying. Like, incredibly frustrating. It's like, why are you even here?
Yeah, a lot of this game feels like the actual mechanics of the game are sort of a footnote. Like, it's not within a country mile of being as well realized as a lot of the recent Tales games mechanics have been. Like, the Tales games run the gamut as far as writing goes.
Yes.
But as far as combat mechanics go, Like, Tales of Graces was incredible. Like, I've never seen such a complex, deep, articulated combat system in a JRPG as was in Tales of Graces. There's so much you could do there, so many different ways to approach and participate in combat. Too much, almost. For someone like me, I could not hold all that information in my head, and I played quite poorly because of it. Because there was just so much to know and so much to learn. It was actually just easier to turn the difficulty down and then find something that worked because it was so hard. But yeah, it's in this game, the combat is relatively rudimentary by comparison, and the mechanics that lie outside it for like adjusting your stats and buffs and that sort of thing, like there is quite a bit of complexity to them, but it's almost impenetrable. Like there's a resonance system, which is basically while you're fighting, random effects can proc based on the relationships between two characters. But the relationships that will be active in combat is determined by the way you set the characters out on a particular grid and the traits that you assign to each of them. Okay. So the simplest example that I could give would be if your character has entered into sort of like a very close lover's relationship with one of the female characters, the main character and one of the females.
Mm-hmm.
Then if you assign the trait associated with that female character being in love with the main character to her, and then put them on adjacent positions on the grid, then there'll be a chance that variously during combat it will proc a buff that will affect the both of them.
Okay.
And there are various means that you can improve the power of that buff or the frequency with which it procs or whatever. The thing is that when you have got a lot of characters like you do in a JRPG, and you arrange them all on this grid, you get an incredibly complicated web of relationships because every adjacent one affects all of the others in some way, unless it's a trait that bears absolutely no relationship between the two. And there are a few like that just don't affect other ones.
So I'm starting to see where the problem lies now. You're going to have negative traits in there as well.
Yeah, there's a huge number of different combinations, and it's very, very difficult to work out which combinations are effective, which ones are beneficial, which ones are going to clash, and then get everything arranged. Like, there are some that obviously clash. Like, setting up your main character as like the center of a love triangle on that grid is almost never a good idea. I haven't been able to work out any means in which that works out. Although there is sort of like some of the almost impossible to interpret sort of things suggest that if it's just a love triangle, then it actually builds negative traits between both the ladies and yourself, but they gradually build a positive trait between each other.
Okay.
But yeah, there's lots of like weird spontaneously appearing effects that you don't expect. So it's almost always ends up being safer just to use very, very boring generic ones and then hope you don't do anything which will mess things up too badly. And there are certain things that synergize, like the idol trait synergizes with the genius trait and the hero trait, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are other weirder traits that you can't really predict exactly how they're going to work, and they clash for reasons that are very difficult to understand.
I see.
So I'm not really sure what's going on a lot of the time. Like the Shining Knight, for some reason, clashes with almost everything except other traits of its exact type. And there was one trait that I can't remember where is it. It was very strange. I didn't really. Maiden Handkerchief. I'm not really quite sure what the deal is with that, but you get traits for all sorts of different things. Like there's a trait that I got which was based on two of the heroines discussing their favorite novels. But Maiden Handkerchief creates sort of it seems to create a beneficial relationship between that character and one which is in a relationship with the main character. But it also seems to, but despite the fact that it's like one notch down in the sort of progression from that character's in love trait. That doesn't make any sense because it should be creating a different effect. It should be it should generate a love triangle instead, since it's the same type, but it doesn't. Instead, it's just a net benefit.
Okay.
And I don't really understand why. And there are also other kinds of weird things, like people clashing for reasons like one's too eccentric, or one of them is a natural talent versus a hard worker. But there are a lot of them just have incomprehensible. You can't like put a person who's got a trait for being like cool and cold, sort of like strategist type. You can't put them alongside a Joker very easily or anything like that. There are lots of these weird things, but there are so many characters that getting them all to sync up without causing clashes almost always you end up doing the robot combat thing, right? You just use the wedge. The wedge is easier. Yep. So you put everybody to a very simple and non-conflicting sort of general supportive attitude type trait, and just jam them all in there, because the only way you're not going to blow everything up. So you've got all of this bond manipulation stuff going on in the background, but the combat system itself is just button spam. Why? So this game is very, very unbalanced in its design in a lot of ways. So, yeah. Anyway, I don't have a great deal more to say about that.
All right.
At this point, I'm at the stage with this game where I mainly just want to push on towards the end so I can move on to another game, because the story isn't that engaging. Like, it's pretty much a one unit JRPG. Like, there is a kingdom and there is an empire. Guess which one is bad? They're at war. You need to resolve the situation.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And there is a magic super weapon and an ancient god imprisoned that is going to be freed.
Also crystals.
I'm trying to think if there are crystals. Crystals are the standard method. Well, they're called aspects, but they look like crystals that you slot into your character to adjust the effects of your abilities and that sort of thing.
Yep. Yeah.
The only thing that's really not unique about it is that the weapons are all musical instruments, except for Vandalhorn, which is just a sword, because it's for the main character. But all of the weapons are musical instruments of various sorts that have been adapted into weapons of various kinds. The one that just makes me giggle is Barmonium. It's a harmonium, but it's also like a support machine gun.
I see.
Barmonium. Browning automatic rifle-monium. I don't know what it was called in Japanese, but I find that really amusing.
Yeah, that pun probably wouldn't work in Japanese.
I don't know if it's intentional, but I'm pretty sure.
I'm pretty sure it would be, yeah.
Makes sense.
Oh dear, oh dear.
It's actually one of those games where I've sort of like drifted away from using the main character as the one that I control directly.
Okay.
Because, number one, I don't like using the healer as my main character because I can't react quickly enough, like the way a computer can when it sees the health has dropped below a set level. Like, I could heal more efficiently, but I'd have to pay so much attention to the health bars that I'd probably stand in the fire.
Yeah.
I also don't really want to play the tank character because the aggro is so janky that I can't guarantee that I'm doing my job just because I'm trying real hard. Mm-hmm. And because you do less damage, you can't swing the outcome of a fight very effectively. I've drifted away from playing the main character because while the main character does a lot of damage and you can mop things up really quickly, he's the most apt to be able to take care of himself when left to the AI's control. Because he's tough, he's relatively well balanced. His sword attacks are quite swingy with wide arcs, so he's going to hit something. Mm-hmm. And he has generally good stats on everything. He's quite tough, you know. And what's more, he's got more hit points than most of the other characters. So leaving him under the AI's control isn't going to break things. So I've actually ended up playing one of the side characters the most, Marion, who has a minuscule hit point pool, frustratingly small. And she's the one that uses the Barmonium, which is like a long-range support weapon. And it's turned out that it is much, much more effective for me to make sure that my long-range heavy supporting fire is always in the right place compared to using any of the other roles. simply because you lay down such a massive fusillade of DPS that you can make the fight end faster. And if I don't control her, she'll stand in the fire with her no hit points.
That sounds about right.
It's just more effective for me to play a minor character and make sure that, you know, she shoots the things she should shoot. But yeah, I haven't even worked out how some of the mechanics work. Like I triggered some thing at one point yesterday, and I have no idea what it was or how I did it or what the effect was, but it involved a dramatic mini cutscene.
Okay.
But I have no idea what it referred to at all. It just sort of happened while I was playing. And I've seen major enemy characters do the same thing against me.
Okay.
But I thought it just indicates that an enemy is using a power-up or a skill or something. But I used one for the first time after like 50 hours of fiddling about yesterday, and I have no idea how I did it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I take it the game just does not explain those sorts of things properly.
No, it does not.
Yeah.
Maybe it's in the manual, but they don't sell PS4 games with manuals.
No.
This game came out on the PS3 originally.
Oh boy. All right.
So it could be in the manual. Anyway.
It might be in the manual, yeah. Anywho, we should take a break.
Yes.
Yes. So, we're going to do just that. We'll be back in a few minutes after a bit of music. we're back with more No Excuses. Uh,
Or at least we're going to attempt to have more no excuses.
we are going to attempt because there's not a whole lot of newsy things this week.
No, there is not.
Nah. Let me see. Where shall we start? Alright, we'll start with something small and easy. There is a new release of Kingdom Hearts coming out. Again. They're almost as prolific as Skyrim. Almost.
But at least they're not liars like Todd Howard. He's always lying. He lies like Molyneux.
Well, no, nobody lies like Molyneux.
Well, his lies, I guess, are less outrageous, I guess.
Yeah.
Something like that.
They have some basis in reality.
But he still says things like, it just works.
Yeah, you should never say that.
Which is what I think that was to do with Fallout 4's town building system.
Yeah. Oh, it mostly worked.
I don't know particularly what he's talking. But I think he's also said stuff. I don't remember if it was him about how he's about some game. I don't remember which one it was, where none of the NPCs were scripted, allegedly, or something like that.
Oh, jeez, I can't remember that one. It's going back a ways. Anywho.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
Todd Howard's a liar. He wants you to buy Skyrim.
Buy more Skyrim. Boy.
Doesn't matter how many times you might have already bought it.
Yeah, just buy more Skyrim. Buy it on Alexa. Buy it on Fridge. I really do appreciate that. They're at least self-aware enough.
Not that made them mend their ways or anything.
Oh, no. Anywho. So, Kingdom Hearts, the story so far version now. It is Kingdom Hearts 1.5, 2.5, and 2.8 all rolled into one very confusing package.
I'll be honest, I thought that this thing already existed.
Yeah. It may have in some form.
Because they've made so many releases now. Like not many games straight up just have decimal releases.
No. Not anymore.
Like it's not even like a novelty thing. It's like, no, this is actually what we're doing here. This is a minor version iteration of what we were previously doing. Yeah.
We don't need to even worry about something like, conventional naming. So if anyone can actually understand the plot of Kingdom Hearts, good luck. It's all here in one place. You might actually find out who is actually Xehanort now.
Nobody knows who Xehanort is. Come on.
Yes, we do. Everyone's Xehanort. Except for Xehanort.
Yeah, but there might be Xehanorts that are more Xehanort than other Xehanorts.
Yep.
Like there might be degrees of Xehanort.
And this right here is the problem with Kingdom Hearts. It makes no damn sense. The whole thing has just been conflated to this massive pulsating mass of
Xehanorts.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong, I still love the franchise. It's just, don't think about the story.
I wonder if they're going to put Star Wars in it.
Maybe? Like, if you'd asked me last year, I would have said yes, do it. It would be great. Now...
I don't think that I could stomach being asked to have Rey as an ally.
No, you'd have to go with classic Star Wars.
She's so dumb. Like all of the characters in new Star Wars are dumb.
Yeah. Even they had a couple of characters who were new that were interesting. Like Finn was interesting. Briefly. Was.
Until they made sure that he was just like the blackface comic relief character.
Yeah. Star Wars is kind of ruined now.
Why do anything interesting when you can just have the black man do pratfalls over and over?
Yeah.
This is how you show your racial sensitivity. You make the black guy the butt of every joke.
Yes, so much for him coming to terms with the atrocities he's committed under the totally not Empire's rule. No, forget all that.
How are they even ruling? Are they ever going to explain that?
No, probably not.
Like I thought Star Wars ended Episode 7 with winning.
Yes, it did,
I
and yet
thought-
somehow now there's bad
I
guys
thought-
again.
Yeah, like I just don't comprehend. I fundamentally do not comprehend what is taking place here.
Yeah.
I sent you the Correa's takedown of it, which is a very, very short one compared to some of the ones that I read.
Compared to his
But,
usual rants, that one was very, very brief.
I think that for most geeks, it's painful to talk about.
Yeah, yeah. Like at least the prequels had some merits to them. And Force Awakens kind of picked up that initial vein where everything happening on screen was fast and cool, as long as you didn't stop and think about things. Because as soon as you did that, everything fell apart.
Yeah, it was like a Marvel movie basically. It was just speak to.
Yeah, and that was fine. But
Well, you say it's fine. I mean, I would have liked for it to actually be good,
well, yeah,
but it was merely passable. Like what Correa describes about that first movie is the exact way that I and my friends felt.
Likewise.
We watched it initially, but the more we thought about it, the worse it seemed. Until the point where we'd really thought about it, and the entire thing could barely be stomached. Like you just didn't want to think about it anymore at all because it was all too awful.
Mm-hmm.
It's too much of a failure. Falls too far short of what it could have been.
Yep. Anywho, so where were we? Kingdom Hearts. Ah, dear, oh dear, oh dear. We're having a hard time staying on track. We've got to try and pad a bit.
Well, I mean, I know they're doing like, they're doing Pirates of the Caribbean again. They'll probably hit the usual ones like that. But I'm wondering if they're going to put anything particularly radical in there.
And Big Hero 6 is in there.
I don't even know what that is. Like that one really puzzled me.
It's a very obscure Marvel property. So
Right.
the original movie, actually, Big Hero 6 was fun in its kind of dumb sort of way. The robot Baymax is adorably goofy. So yeah, it's a fun movie, and I recommend going and watching that one just for the fun of it. Also, everything's going to end up being sucked into a vortex in the sky eventually. That's just a thing that's going to happen now.
And then all will be Xehanort.
And then all will be Xehanort. Yeah, this just in. Disgruntled schoolteacher is also Xehanort.
Search your feelings, you know it to be true.
Darth Vader is also Xehanort. So, this...
I could believe that.
I could also believe that. No, actually, it'll be Emperor Palpatine. No, it won't. It'll be R2-D2. Kingdom Hearts. So, this bundle contains Kingdom Hearts 1, the final mix. It contains Chain of Memories, the cinematic movie version of 358/2 Days. You know, it's basically people sitting around eating ice cream, the movie.
Really?
Yeah. Is
it more of that salt-flavored ice cream?
That's all they eat. And
It has to be bad for your sodium levels.
Yes, especially the amount they eat. Good grief! It's just the amount of ice cream eaten in that game is ridiculous. Anywho, Birth by Sleep it contains as well as Kingdom Hearts recoded in the same everybody sitting around eating ice cream movie mode. Tacked onto that is also 2.8, which has Dream Drop Distance HD. It has the Birth by Sleep tech demo that they used at various conventions and things, which contains nuggets of story. And it's got the movie back cover, which I have not watched. Whatever that means. So let me see. They're doing pre-orders for a moment. How much do they actually want for this thing? $40.
$1 million.
$40 actually is pretty good, yeah.
Is that 40 whose bucks?
40 American dollars.
Right, so that's basically, if I translate it into New Zealand dollars, that's basically what you would pay to buy all those pieces separately. So it's not actually helpful.
No. Well, it saves you screwing around trying to find all the pieces, I guess.
That's true. And what's more, there'll be a fresh printing.
Yep. And if you go to
Because
EB
it can occasionally be
Games,
hard to find one.
don't buy Kingdom Hearts games from EB Games. By the way, they're still selling all those beasts at top dollar. Last I looked.
Who buys stuff from EB Games?
Yeah, well, sometimes you just gotta, because there's no other choices.
Do you though? Do you gotta?
Reluctantly, very, very reluctantly. So anyway, that's that. What else we got for news? There's while we're on the topic, I suppose, Phoenix Wright is getting a PS4 version for the original trilogy.
Like my prayers have been answered.
Yes, and it's all done
I
up.
Finally have a means of playing it.
Yep, it's done up. It's all kind of put together nicely. Everything looks pretty for the PS4 version, although it still uses the lower frame rate because keep the style, I guess. So yeah, go get it. It's going to be good because the original trilogy is good, and it involves coffee, lots of coffee towards the end. Right, that's the fun things out of the way. Unless you want to talk about the Mega Man movie.
I don't want to talk about the Mega Man movie because it's probably little to no point anyway, considering it's not going to exist.
Nah, probably not. And even if it did, it's going to be an absolute dumpster fire.
Yeah. I don't see how you could do that. Like, it doesn't say explicitly that it's going to be live action. Like,
yes.
How could you even?
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
No. Don't. Don't even.
It's not U-Bowl, at least.
Well, he hasn't made a movie in a while, has he?
No,
I can't.
I think he's just pretty much just coasting on royalties these days because his movies are bad to the point where you can enjoy them ironically. Or in the case of Resident Evil ones, the first one particularly, it's so bad it becomes good again. So,
yeah, I don't know about that.
Well, for a given value of good. Sometimes you just really want to watch B-grade schlock.
I mean, I'm inclined to think that it might just be bad. Like,
it's pretty bad.
That was the impression that I got.
It is really bad.
It was bad. It was bad on account of being extraordinarily bad.
Yeah. So this is going to be another movie project I doubt's actually going to see the light of day. Although there is a lot of content I suppose they could use there for Mega Man, but it's probably going to end up being terrible.
I don't know. I think that there are some things that there are some content that are just incompatible with certain mediums, and I think that Mega Man and live action they go together like oil and water.
Yeah.
I don't think that this is a thing. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I think it would work a lot better with a full CG based movie, honestly.
I don't think we need another Spirits Within.
No, nobody wants another Spirits Within. Oh boy. Can we not do Spirits Within again? I still got that on UMD somewhere, now that I think of it.
Why?
I don't even know where it came from. It just turned up.
Spirits Within.
I saw that at the cinema. I can't remember if I did or not. It was so long ago.
I saw it at the local cinema. The local cinema had extremely old leather upholstery and unpleasantly uncomfortable springs, and yeah, it was that old of a cinema.
It made the entire experience a lot more unpleasant.
On the upside, because it was a really, really old cinema, they still had a break between reels for you to go to the bathroom.
Wow, that is old.
Yeah. I sort of appreciate that though. Like, my bladder's never been very good.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the opportunity to empty it.
And in the case of a movie like Spirits Within, you kind of need a break.
Yeah, I'm still not even sure what it was about.
Space moths? I don't know.
I thought it was about space ghosts, but not the funny one.
Yeah, or something. I don't know. It's a mess, is what it was. Alright. Do you want to talk about Blizzard?
I think we can talk about Blizzard. I've got a few things to say about it.
Okay.
But where were we starting?
Well, we'll start
Mike
with the
Morhaime, I
article.
guess.
Mike Morhaime.
Right, so Mike Morhaime, long-time Grand Muckety Muck of Blizzard, is stepping down.
Yes.
I'm not really surprised. He's been there a very long time,
30 odd years.
almost more than I expected. But so a bit of background, I guess. Like he's basically Mr. Blizzard and has always been.
Yes.
The one that tied all of the teams and properties together effectively. And he's basically the core reason that Blizzard was able to maintain an identity as Blizzard after the merger with Activision to become Activision Blizzard, which is what they're still called. They're still called Activision Blizzard. And Blizzard, under Morhaime's rule, basically resisted all attempts. This is the official story, and the story that I got from Mark Kern and so on. Blizzard resisted attempts from Activision to dictate policy and basically refused to cooperate with anything to the point where they were allowed to operate as their entirely separate company. That just happened to be the same financial entity on paper as Activision proper. So that was largely due to Morhaime's leadership sort of cementing that policy in place. And so, yeah, while he's not necessarily, the creative input for the game or anything like that anymore, he was very instrumental in permitting Blizzard to continue to act in the capacity that it did. So he's stepping down now after a very long time. He's sort of earned it really at this point, I think, having served in that capacity for so long. But while this, in theory, should not affect anything, but I'm not really sure if that will hold up in practice because of what he represented for Blizzard as far as holding the lot of them. I hope that it won't affect them because while I have a lot of differences of opinion with Blizzard on certain things Blizzard does and the reasons and modes of operation for them doing them. I still don't really want them to be compiled into another game and mega publisher.
No, that would be a sad day to
Blizzard,
see that.
Blizzard still, no matter what you might think of the quality of the content they produce, they still have. There's something Blizzardy about Blizzard games. And that's not always a good thing. It's not always a bad thing. But they do have an identity. And if the leadership that takes over in Mike Morhaime's place isn't strong enough, I think that they'll probably end up basically being like a Call of Duty factory, except for WoW expansions and Diablo clones and
rubbish
that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Basically, I think that we will see the playing out of all of the worst aspects of Blizzard that we've seen so far.
I really hope that doesn't end up being the case. It'll be a very sad day.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I mean, best wishes to him. Like, although I've poo-pooed a lot of the stuff Blizzard has done over the years, the best times that I had were still also under him. So.
Yep.
Because he was always there.
So thank you for the fun and the angries.
But it seems like most of the old guard has gone now.
Yeah. There's not many of them left, if any.
Like there's no Metzen or anybody left. All those people have moved on, whether to retire or to greener pastures or whatever. It's hard to say, but it's sort of like I hope that they have passed the torch on in that sense, because somebody's got to maintain that identity, and there's nobody left of the original founders anymore, it seems. So I hope that they don't end up becoming another one of Activision's appendages.
Yes. That would be gross, and we don't want that. Nobody wants that. Could be worse, I suppose. Could be EA.
But yeah, so there's a bunch of stuff going on with Blizzard at the moment. Let's see. The next most obvious one is BlizzCon. BlizzCon is happening, as it always does. The buy lots of Blizzard merch trade show, which is basically what it is.
When they have a panel which is essentially buy our merch.
Yeah, and I can't blame them. Merch makes a lot of money.
Yes, it does.
But yeah, so it's they don't have a new game that they've been teasing or anything like that.
Nope.
And they also said specifically that as far as WoW is concerned, they aren't going to be talking about 8.1, which is the next patch for World of Warcraft. So I'm sort of a bit wondering what they're going to talk about. I guess they could talk about 8.2, but it'd be nice if they had something a bit more substantive than that, you know?
Yeah, just a little bit. So they have made murmurings about revamping the Azerite system because, you know, they've finally just cottoned on that the things that everybody's been saying since the beta were, you know, right.
Right, so this was a bit of a debacle.
Yes.
This is a slightly different piece of news. I don't think they'll talk about it at BlizzCon because it's too much, like, shop stuff, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, Blizzard has been stuck in this painful to watch loop of constantly triaging their game every week since the expansion came out.
Yes.
Which is a really, really bad place for them, to be quite blunt. They cannot afford this. But yeah, so what we've got at work now is a whole bunch of things about the game that are philosophically derelict as far as design is concerned. And the most obvious among these is Azerite gear, because of the simple fact that it's their flagship element to this expansion. Now, one of the problems with this expansion is that it's got so many legacy things in it. And when I say legacy things, I don't mean long-running legacy things. I mean legacy things just from Legion. Like, a lot of the systems have just been cloned from Legion and new things bolted on to make it a bit fresher.
Mm-hmm.
But that basically, as I've mentioned in previous shows, results in the capacity to make a lot of unflattering comparisons with Legion for starters. But the way that they had planned to distinguish themselves in the absence of the artifact weapons and the absence of legendaries was the Azerite system, but everybody hates it.
Yeah.
Everybody hates it. It's awful. It basically constrains you to have to fart about with huge numbers of alternate pieces of gear that constantly have to be re-theory crafted and readapted and shifted about, and you have to reselect your traits at absolutely usurious gold cost, like punishingly expensive. Like we're talking starts at 5 gold and literally doubles every time per talent change, basically.
Yep. And you're gonna need to do those a lot.
It's the entire system is unpleasant, unwieldy, and heinously complicated for no good reason.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, nobody likes it. So a lot of these things, because they're sort of like things that have been broadly regarded by the community, and there's not really a lot of debate about it, really. Like, there's always the Blizzard Defense Force who never ever think anything is wrong with anything Blizzard has ever done ever. Aside from them, it seems to be pretty unanimous that there are really severe problems with the system. So there was a large thread sprung up, basically going through in pretty explicit detail a lot of the major problems, and these were responded to by Law, and Law dropped the ball badly.
Ooh,
he
yes.
basically made light of everybody's concerns, and it was a very sort of snarky, condescending sort of thing. Basically saying, I'm more of an old fag than you, therefore I know better, sort of thing. The whole thing, it went down really, really poorly, because it seemed like he was just saying, "We're Blizzard, we know better than you. You think you do, but you don't," and then just brushing it off. This basically was a bomb dropped on the community, and people had basically, okay, so this basically proves that Blizzard are incompetent. They don't listen to their player base. All of their problems, which we have foretold in advance, they have all manifested because they never listen. They aren't willing to take criticism. They're just going to stand on their pride and refuse to admit when they've made mistakes. And this was the reaction. And my gut feeling is that Law got called into someone's office and dragged across hot coals.
I would not be surprised after a post like that.
Because a few days later, Law puts up another post which details in explicit detail all of these things that they have planned to try and rectify the problems with Azerite as quickly as possible. Like, a lot of them are band-aid fixes, but some of them are further-reaching ones, and they add much more interesting dimensions to pieces of gear, ones that, you know, actually affect your playstyle to some extent, basically making the system have an effect other than your bags are now full.
Yes.
So what that means basically is that, number one, Law flew off the handle and said a bunch of stuff he shouldn't have and got in trouble for it. And number two, it means that Law somehow didn't know that changes were in the works. He was not informed about them, or he wouldn't have basically put out a party line that everything was fine and it will just be tuned. The problems will be tuned away, because clearly they don't intend to tune; they intend to revamp.
Yes,
and he didn't know. So what good is he? What good is he exactly? Yeah. So at any rate, this means that Blizzard is reacting, at least in that sense, and it is a fix, which is a band-aid essentially. It's being put on top of the problems that they have. It won't address any of the philosophical weaknesses in their design and their approach to expansions going forward, but it's, you know, better than nothing. It's going to stop the game from imploding in the short term. But yeah, it was interesting to see that they were willing. There's such a big gap between the people like Law. Is Law just a community manager?
As far as I know, yeah.
Yeah, there's a pretty big gap between the community managers and the people who are, you know, doing the roadmap for where the game is going forward, which basically puts Blizzard on the back foot compared to a lot of their direct competitors like Guild Wars and that, who are very careful to lay out roadmaps a great deal of time in advance so that people know the direction things are headed.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I'm glad for the people that are playing it that they're not, you know, stuck within another expansion's worth of Drek simply because Blizzard won't back down on one of their stupid ideas.
Yes.
Just, you know, that's basically what made Warlords of Draenor so bad, is that they made a plan and they stuck to it in the face of all criticism.
Garrison was the worst thing ever.
And they suffered one of the worst attrition rates in history as a result. But yeah, so that's another Blizzard note. So 8.1 is available on PTR now, I believe.
I believe so.
And people are playing it, and it seems like Blizzard is just butchering their lore even more.
Oh dear.
And what's more, they are running into serious problems with their design in terms of the way a game tells a story, in this case particularly, or the way an MMO tells a story. So Blizzard has historically been all over the map on this throughout the history of WoW. There's been no consistent model. But now this is where I think this is what I feel is the sort of the gut feeling at the center of at least a good number of people's affection for WoW Classic and hoping that WoW Classic will be good, is that the story that was told in WoW Classic, in WoW Vanilla, that your character was a participant in it to the extent that you were involved. And while you weren't, you know, necessarily the great hero or anything, the world was more credible because you got to decide what you did, where you did it. You solved problems that happened on the scale of your character generally,
Mm-hmm.
except if you were with like 39 other people, in which case you could solve a problem of a grander scale. And so you end up with the truly coveted MMO feeling of being a participant in a world. And this is contrasts very, very sharply with the modern WoW approach, which is a heavily directed single-player story, which is basically choreographed from start to finish to make you the big hero, or to make an NPC the big hero while you watch them. And this is sort of starting to reach its sort of like apex of the corrupting effect on the feeling of playing an MMO in 8.1, from what I can see, from what people are saying. So this is spoilers. So if anybody's like super into the WoW story, and I say it's spoilers, I'm going to be very vague and inaccurate because I don't know a huge amount about it. I just know broad strokes, but it's probably spoilers. So basically, everybody knows Sylvanas burnt down the World Tree.
Yes.
The new World Tree, the Darnassus World Tree. I don't remember what it's called.
Teldrassil.
Teldrassil. So Teldrassil got burnt down by Sylvanas for no reason, other than reason.
Peak.
Yeah, although I expect that they will try and rescue that over the course of the next few patches because it's such a glaring writing problem. They'll probably come up with a really half-assed excuse to make it work. But so basically, they're trying to set Sylvanas up to be a bad guy. The problem is that there are a lot of players who play Forsaken, and both in character and out of character are big fans of the Banshee Queen. But they have made her the bad guy. Now, Garrosh was a new character. He had a lot of supporters. He has more supporters now than he used to. But now that he's dead, people like him. But he did have supporters, but there weren't very many because he was new to the scene, and he didn't endear himself to anybody out of the gate. But
he went out of his way to do the opposite, in fact.
Well, except for a few places, like in Stone Talon, where there was a different writer who wasn't briefed on what they were planning to do in the future, which is why he's a nice guy there and nowhere else.
Yeah.
Because he actually stops people from committing war crimes on the basis that it's not honorable to do it.
Yeah.
Which is something he does at no other point in the story. But yeah, Sylvanas has had a long time to become part of the furniture for Horde players, particularly Forsaken players, especially so. And she's had, as I've mentioned before, a lot of deep character arcs concerning with her internal conflicts about the sort of creature she's become and how she's supposed to exist in this world, how she's supposed to keep the Forsaken going, whether or not she cares for them or is just using them as a vehicle to increase her own longevity is immaterial in that sense. But ideally, she's still their queen, and they look up to her as such. She's one of the sort of tent poles of the Horde. And so them turning her into a villain is a bit of a questionable thing for starters. So what they've been setting up is this conflict between High Overlord Cao Fang, who has now gone AWOL, is basically on the run from the Horde.
Yep.
Sylvanas views him as a traitor and wants to get rid of him because he's a traitor.
Well, it's going to show up with a new model now.
The thing is, the player's been jammed in the middle, and so we've got what we have now, as of 8.1, is the very worst version of Trahearne syndrome. So when I say Trahearne syndrome, I mean the MMO story design, where basically you are a person who tags along with important lore characters and they do all the cool stuff and get all the credit. In this case, there is not one lore character at work, but two that you are following around, and they are doing the business. So the problem is you have an interaction with Cao Fang because he's an important character and you want to see what he's doing, but you're supposed to be hunting him down. So you meet up with Cao Fang, and then, regardless of what the player wants, regardless of what he feels in character or out of character, you are obliged by the storyline to betray the Banshee Queen and help Cao Fang by killing all of the Dark Rangers that are there. Sylvanas' most beloved troops.
Yes, the sort of thing that she would not take lying down.
Yeah. So you're forced to betray her, and then, presumably Southfang disappears off into the sunset. No, what are you doing next? Oh, you're helping Sylvanas out and raising her a new undead army from the bodies of all the Night Elves that you butchered at Teldrassil.
Yep.
Like, so you this basically is the ongoing pattern, whereas you're basically forced to headcanon that you're trying to play both sides against the middle because you're forced to aid both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is about the worst way that you can tell a story in an MMO, because all agency to decide the stance of your character has been removed. Because if you at any point think to yourself, no, I don't want to kill to betray the Banshee Queen and kill her most loyal servitors, well, you can't do that because the story will stop progressing and you aren't able to participate in the game anymore. It's over. End of story.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, if you say, I hate Sylvanas, she's a monster, and basically a total bitch, I don't want to help her, and then because she committed a war crime against the Night Elves and that's disgusting and I can't stand it. No, you better help her raise all of those undead, even though you were just helping to undermine her rule by helping out Southfang. You got to turn around and help her now.
Yeah.
So basically they have completely lost the plot with their writing. They don't have any coherent story being told relative to the player. They are telling a story relative to the world, and I know they like to say that, the world of Azeroth is the real main character of World of Warcraft. Like, no.
Yeah.
You might like to think that up in your ivory tower, but the people that pay your wages are not the world of Azeroth. They're the people playing their characters. They don't give a toss about the world of Azeroth. What they want to do is they want to play your game. That's what they're here for. So you can't just ignore the character and tell your story because it's your story. I'm sorry, that's not going to wash. I think there's going to be a lot of people who are upset by this because it doesn't feel coherent. There's no sense of involvement in the story. You are just a point of view camera. The reason why you are there with High Elf Lord Southfang is to show what Southfang is doing, and you have to help out because you're there. The reason you are there when Sylvanas is raising the Night Elves is not because you have any feelings about it or because there's a great story you're involved in. You're just the camera there watching Sylvanas do her thing and helping out because you're there. Like, you basically been completely sidelined as a character.
Mm-hmm.
Because the story is so heavily curated, so heavily controlled and directed from the top that you are forced to do out of character things. Like, it doesn't really matter what your character is. You're going to be doing something out of character. You're going to do something incoherent with your previous behavior, which basically, to me, represents a disregard for the player. The player is not any longer a person in this world. They are just a way for Blizzard to tell the story they want to tell. The story has become about what Blizzard wants and not about the players. And I think it's a really, really bad path for the narrative to head down.
Okay. All right. Anything else before we start wrapping up?
You don't have any feedback on that?
Not really. I don't have anything to disagree with on that. Like, yeah, I haven't really been following the story in WoW lately. It's just kind of they have no idea what they're doing now.
I guess I feel a little bit oversensitive to this particular issue because I played a Forsaken from like day one,
mm-hmm.
When I started playing, and for many years.
Yeah,
and like the Undercity was my home in World of Warcraft. Like,
that's because you got lost in there and never found your way out.
That's true, but yeah, because I feel like there's that big gap in the way things are done now as the way they were before once upon a time, where you were a participant in a bigger world. Like, there wasn't as much land space in vanilla, but if you ask me, the world was a lot bigger.
It felt a lot bigger.
It was straight up a bigger world. There were more things to see, more places to go, more things to do, because they were the things that you decided to do most of the time. Like, you didn't get directed through zone after zone after zone after zone on a fixed rails and do all the things that the NPCs wanted you to do. Like, you could waltz into a dungeon for absolutely no reason and do it. You didn't have to, unlock it bit by bit by bit by bit in order to get in there for, an Uber arc to be rendered into a 5-man boss. Like that sort of thing didn't happen.
That's not counting
Yeah.
attunements.
Yeah, so I'm not counting attunements because attunements were sort of like a project that you worked on long term, and it was a project that you chose to take on because you wanted to accomplish something.
Yes.
A lot of people never did any attunements. They spent just as much time playing the game, but they were playing something else. They were doing something else. Whereas, like, you can't not get attuned to a raid these days. It's impossible.
It just happens as soon as you get the required gear level.
Yeah, you get funneled along that road, and the storyline will prod you directly into that Suramar raid or whatever as you progress the story. Like, you're going to get shoved in there if you are really unlucky via LFR, and you're going to experience it. You're going to experience the story we want to tell.
Or else.
So that leads me to the last thing that I wanted to talk about, Blizzard. And that's the only... well, there's a lot of talk about, like, you know, a new Diablo thing, but we don't know any information about that. We don't know if it's an expansion, or if it's going to be a new Diablo game, like a numbered Diablo game, or if it's going to be a freaking mobile game. We don't know.
Please no.
There's always that spectre looming over every announcement now, right?
Yeah, there is.
Like, this might be something we're really excited about, but it might be a mobile game.
Yeah, thank you, Commander.
And this is coming from somebody who spends most of their free time playing a mobile game. Like, I detest mobile games getting announcements. I don't want it. I just don't. I was actually tempted to download another one, and I managed to stop myself. Another gacha.
Oh,
there are so many.
There are so many.
So many waifus. Anyway, so the other hot topic at the moment, because it's something you get access to if you buy the virtual ticket, which is like the dumbest idea in the world, if you ask me.
Yeah, don't do that.
Hold on, I'm going to sneeze. Yeah. I didn't have time to reach for both a tissue and the microphone mute button, so it was either I get mucus all over my microphone, or I grab the tissue and you all have to hear me sneeze. But I don't want to clean my microphone because it's hard to get stuff out of that grill. Ew. Anyway, so the other big topic is WoW Classic, because you get access to the beta, or what there is of it. I don't even know. I don't know how the progress works. Hopefully we'll get more news about it at BlizzCon, because it's what you get for the virtual ticket at BlizzCon is access to that beta. Now, I am glad that there is a lot of like big community voices who will be doing coverage of it, because there is no way that I'm buying a virtual ticket to virtually see stuff I can see on YouTube.
No, especially like, at that price.
Like $50 for this stuff, isn't it? Something like that.
Yeah,
something obscene.
They give you a whole bunch of in-game goodies, but that's not what you're there for.
It's like you could pay $50 to sit in front of your computer and laugh being at BlizzCon. No, thank you.
Yeah. Although, admittedly, the Zeppelin mounts they put out a few years ago were pretty cool.
Don't care about mounts. Well, I do care about mounts. I care deeply about mounts, but I only care about mounts that I think are cool. I don't care about having them for the sake of having numbers.
Yes.
Yeah, so WoW Classic is going to be a thing, and I hope that we get a lot of information on it, because I am really still trying to sort out how I feel about it. I haven't had much luck at all. Like, I have gone on record saying that the WoW experience that we had once upon a time was a product of the time and place and circumstances as much as anything in the game.
Yes.
And we can't have that again. And I think that that's true. But I'm very curious as to see what parts of that experience can be read. And it only came really into sharp focus when I saw this debacle over the upcoming storyline and how regimented it was.
Mm-hmm.
Because of, that amount of freedom that you have to just do as you please, which is what I remember doing. Like, I left things late a lot of the time because I was busy doing something else. Like, oh, yeah, I know I've got a class quest, but I really, really want to try and get enough cloth to make this new robe or whatever. So I'm going to be a couple levels over by the time I've managed to find the recipe and find all of the rare mats and whatnot, but it'll be worth it. So I'll put that off. I'll do it later. And the game did not, sodomize me for it the way it would do today. But and this sort of meshed with my thinking about why would I want to play Destiny 2? well, I want to play Destiny 2 because there's this world that I can derp around in and shoot some stuff and get some things. So there's no chance that I would raid in Classic WoW.
No.
No.
Already been there and done that anyway.
Yeah, I've been there and done that with most of those things, and the things that I want, then it's complicated to set up teams for them if you can even find that many people, and honestly, the fights are not as glorious as they were once because we've seen things that push the envelope a lot more, especially if you've raided Mythic at length like I have.
Yes.
But as a world to tool around in, that feels like a world that is populated with many unknown things. Like, there's piles of stuff in WoW Vanilla that I never saw because the game was so big that even in the years I was playing it, you couldn't see that all, not unless you had a humongous amount of time on your hands. So I don't think I'd ever play World of Warcraft seriously again. But there's a non-zero chance, at least, that I would log into something like WoW Classic just to tool around because of that accumulation thing I talked about earlier. That every time you log in, you're going to get a bit more experience, you're going to get a few more mats, you're going to do something, you make incremental progress towards everything. These days, WoW and a lot of similarly structured MMOs are basically a series of milestones with neon signage.
Yeah.
If you log on and do something, the only thing that you're genuinely accomplishing if you log on for a bit and do something for a bit is like, oh, your gold counter went up a little bit, or your artifact power counter went up a little bit, or your honor points counter went up a little bit. Like, you can't log on and really in any genuine sort of way decide, I think I'll do this today.
Yeah, it's progress, but it just doesn't have the same feel with having something actually meaningful to work towards.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like it's your decision either. Because it's like, oh, I have to push up my artifact power, or I have to progress the storyline to get to the next piece of content, or something like that.
Otherwise you get left behind.
Yeah, but in WoW Vanilla, I don't remember it being like that. It's like, at any given level that you might be, there's like 6 different zones that you go to and just fart about in, and do some quests and collect some things, and there are a million different kinds of mats for doing all kinds of different bizarre things. You might find new mats or rare items or whatever anywhere. It just felt like you had more control over doing what you wanted to do. And sure, there were a lot of things that are not very good quality of life. We don't know the way that things will be implemented when WoW Classic comes out, if it eventually comes out, and I hope it will, because I really want to see it as an experiment to see how it's deployed. But yeah, like I said, I'm not sure I've sorted out my feelings on it, because I know that I can't have WoW Vanilla back again. But it would be nice to have an MMO that functions like a world again.
Yes.
I don't want a full sandbox the way you have in, say, EVE, because a full sandbox is basically a box that's not really full of sand, it's full of razor blades. But it would be nice to have a world that behaved like a world that you could tool around in and do some stuff. And like, I feel like there's so much, so many tasks to do in modern WoW. Like, if you play with your friends, you're not really playing with them, you just happen to be in the same place doing the same thing.
Yeah.
In a sense, like, because everything happens at a high speed and in a very focused manner. It's like, okay, we're going to clear this many mythic keys today. Bam, 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 bam. Like, you can't, explore and do a bunch of quests because the quests are so carefully orchestrated to lead you from one place to the next.
Mm-hmm.
And, people get out of sync really easy and that kind of thing. And it's not like, oh, well, neither of us have done Desolace. We'll go and explore Desolace today. Beat the crap out of those centaurs. It's going to take forever to do it by myself, so you better come and help me. I need that rep.
And then we can never go to Desolace again.
Yeah, because the other centaurs hate us. But it felt like you could pick up a different part of the game and play it, even if it was of the same type. Like, because you could, I want to go and do Eastern Plagueland, or I want to go and do Silithus. I don't think go and do Silithus, but
nobody wants to go to Silithus.
But yeah, so I'm really interested to see if that can come back, and more to the point, not just for WoW Classic, but to see if Blizzard can apprehend that particular slice of magic, that particular type of freedom, and then re-implement that into a new vision for the game. Because frankly, with 2 expansions in a row that are virtually identical to each other now, because let's be real, Battle for Azeroth is just Legion 0.5.
Yeah, huh?
With two in a row that were the same, they are due for a paradigm shift. Like they need to drop something big the next time around, because if you get Legion 0.6, nobody's going to want to play the game anymore, except for the diehard raiders who are only interested in seeing the next raid boss.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I'll call it quits.
Yeah. Getting a bit ranty there. All right. I don't think we can even really want to talk about that last thing, because it's incredibly dumb. All right. We should probably start wrapping up then.
Ari didn't even show up.
Nope.
What is this?
Nope. I think the cultists may have got him.
Could be.
All right. So, with that, closing comments, sir.
I think I've already said more than enough for one day. My throat's getting a little raw.
Fair enough.
I hope that I have some time to do some more stuff this week. I might watch some new anime tonight. I might not. It's just very hard to motivate myself to do so because it's mostly not very interesting.
Yeah. I hope to actually have accomplished something in the next week. We shall see.
I have kept watching the Persona 5 one, and I think that it has been a pretty adequate deployment of the story. It's not blowing my mind, but it's pretty adequate. I think it's like it's Destiny 2. Nothing wrong with it. Yeah. And the base material, the base material of it is good, so it's sort of like it's hard to screw up too badly.
Roughly, whereabouts is the anime up to anyway?
I have just seen the main character receive a bullet between the eyes.
Okay. So everything's coming to a head.
Yeah. The first of several final climaxes is happening.
Yeah, that game, once it starts climaxing, it keeps going. Wow, that sounded horrible.
Yeah, you need to rethink your word choice.
But, yeah.
Yeah, so it's the number one effect that it has is to make me want to play the game again, which maybe that's the intention. So,
in that case, mission accomplished.
Yeah. I really would love to play that game again, but who has the time?
It does take a lot of time. It's a long game. Anywho. So yeah, closing comments for me is, I'm going to try and accomplish something this week.
Gonna try.
Otherwise, I'll just sit around waiting for Warriors Orochi, which I am now hyped for, and it took a whole 5 minutes for that to happen.
Yeah, I didn't realise that I was going to have that effect when I brought it up.
I mean, we're kind of starved for a new Dynasty Warriors game.
Yeah, I still like to go back and play 8 now and again, but it's not fresh.
I don't know. Maybe one day they'll actually make 9.
Yeah. I don't know what they'll call it though.
But
there's already a discrepancy in numbering between Japan and the US. Discrepancy.
Yeah. So we just write the 9 we got off as it didn't happen, and you call the new one just Dynasty Warriors 9. Forget about the old one.
Well, they added all kinds of Greek letters and stuff after Street Fighter numbers. So
yeah. Dynasty Warriors 9 plus Ultra Gamma, Ultra Remix Redux Double X. I don't know.
It's starting to sound like a Kingdom Hearts game now.
It's starting to sound like a Capcom game, actually. Anyway.
Did you the other thing? I don't know if we've talked about this before. I just wanted to quickly mention it because I thought it was kind of lousy.
Okay.
Like, Capcom can't not screw something up. So, did they do this last time? And I think we might have mentioned it on the show before. Selling red orbs. And selling unlocks for moves.
No,
and
we didn't mention
that.
It costs
before. More money to. It costs more money to unlock a move in Devil May Cry the more complicated it is to use. And I think that this makes perfect sense.
Here's an idea. Play the freaking game.
Yeah, yes, I understand that it's an option, Capcom. You are still stupid.
It's still scummy.
I don't even think it's scummy. It's like too dumb to be scummy.
Yeah.
It's like a person can do something incredibly harmful just because they are stupid, not necessarily because they're malicious. And I think Capcom are just stupid.
Yeah, I think they've definitely crossed that line into just stupid on that one.
Anyway, I'm sure Ari will give us the skinny on exactly why Capcom is retarded and about Cowboy Boomer Dante memes and stuff that I've been seeing all the time.
I have no idea what that's all about. Anywho, let's get out of here. So,
Alrighty.
we will be back next week, same time, same place, preferably with an Ari.
Yeah, if he ever comes down off that mountain.
Yes, if.
He's going to come down carrying 2 stone tablets inscribed with a bunch of racial epithets.
And at the bottom, just give me beer. Wow, this is horribly racist already. We're going to go. Thank you. Good night.